Hello everyone, and welcome to the M.O.W. channel. Today, we're bringing you a documentary on the full story of the Jesse Calhoun case, the serial killer who plunged Portland into fear. We'd be truly grateful if you'd hit the subscribe and like buttons, as your support is a huge help in creating these videos. Now, let's look at the entire process, from the initial events to the trial. In the early spring of 2023, Portland, Oregon, appeared on the surface to be a peaceful and vibrant city. The riverside trails, small cafes, and bustling commuter roads provided residents with a sense of stability in their daily lives. However, an unexplained tension was subtly taking hold in the residential and commercial areas on the city's outskirts. It was at this moment that the first missing woman case, one that drew the attention of both the Portland police and the FBI, occurred. The initial incident caused relatively little shock in the local community. Police classified it as a simple personal crime, and residents dismissed the event as temporary misfortune, focusing on their routines. But the situation changed a few months later with the occurrence of a second and then a third missing woman case. Although the three incidents happened in different areas, similarities among the victims and their points of contact with Calhoun began to emerge through the investigation. Police and the FBI could no longer dismiss the possibility that a single perpetrator was involved, and the investigation grew increasingly urgent. Jesse Calhoun was a man in his late 30s at the time, an individual who, on the surface, led a typical, ordinary life. He wasn't particularly conspicuous in his workplace or social activities and didn't exhibit any behavior that would arouse suspicion among those around him. However, as the investigation progressed, police began to identify abnormal signs in his seemingly ordinary daily patterns and actions hidden behind his unremarkable exterior. Calhoun's movements, the timing of his contacts with the victims, his digital communication records, and even his credit card usage history all became subjects of analysis. CCTV records and witness statements served as crucial clues, connecting his actions to the timing of the incidents. With evidence suggesting he had contact with the victims at specific times or was in the vicinity of the crime scenes, suspicion against Calhoun grew increasingly concrete. Investigators used this information to verify his alibis and cross-analyze his location and behavioral patterns during the incidents. Meanwhile, the victims' families experienced extreme anxiety. From the very beginning, amidst delays in the police investigation and a lack of clear evidence, they had to spend every night in fear. Tension also spread throughout the entire community. Women began avoiding going out alone, intensifying their self-imposed safety measures by traveling with friends or family, or adjusting their routes when moving at night. Safety education and crime prevention workshops were organized in local communities, and citizens shared information, establishing a minimal safety net. In the initial phase of the investigation, Calhoun's ordinary appearance meant he didn't draw direct police attention. However, the subtly repetitive patterns, points of contact with victims, specific times of movement, and activity near the areas where the incidents occurred strengthened the investigators' suspicion. While he acted to blend in with the general public in his daily life, the circumstances gradually revealed through the investigation made it impossible to rule out his involvement in the crimes. The Portland police and the FBI worked to uncover the truth of the case with limited evidence. The investigation involved a multifaceted review of witness interviews, communication records, CCTV analysis, and tips from local residents. Despite the confusion and lack of clues in the early stages, the police began to confirm the outline of the case through systematic analysis and collaboration. During this period, the disparity between Jesse Calhoun's ordinary exterior and his secretive actions became a vital point of observation for investigators. His outward calmness contrasted sharply with the suspicious behavior that emerged during the inquiry. As the disappearances and Calhoun's movements began to align, the tension of the case became increasingly palpable for both the public and the investigating agencies. In April 2023, a series of women's disappearances across downtown and suburban Portland led police and the FBI to increasingly focus on a single suspect. The moment Jesse Calhoun's name entered the investigation, his seemingly ordinary life and appearance were no longer just the image of a simple citizen. While he didn't exhibit any particularly suspicious behavior in the initial investigation, as the inquiry deepened, various circumstances related to the crimes began to converge on Calhoun. The first three disappearance cases occurred in different areas: Portland's city center, near residential neighborhoods, and suburban roads. Although the locations varied, similarities among the victims and their points of contact with Calhoun started to emerge through the investigation. The victims were all women in their 20s and 30s leading normal lives. While the times and locations of the crimes were irregular, a consistent pattern was observed in each incident. Based on these subtle connections, police and investigators began a meticulous analysis of Calhoun's actions. Calhoun's method of operation was elaborate and calculated. The crime scenes were superficially undisturbed, with minimal evidence left behind. After the crimes, Calhoun was meticulous in concealing evidence and tried to minimize his digital footprint. It was only through the analysis of communication records and GPS data that his movements and points of contact at the time of the incidents were revealed. The crime locations were significantly distant from one another, but repeated inconsistencies were found in his travel routes and alibi verification, which became a key factor in the police increasingly identifying Calhoun as the prime suspect. During the investigation, police interviewed Calhoun's co-workers, family, and acquaintances to analyze his daily patterns. Repetitive actions within his ordinary life, such as patterns of going out or visiting specific locations at certain times, overlapped with the incidents. Efforts were made to substantiate the connection to the crimes through cross-analysis of communication records, credit card usage history, and CCTV footage around his residence. This multifaceted approach was the only avenue to uncover clues hidden within the secrecy of the crimes. The victims' families had to endure each day in a state of extreme anxiety and terror as the incidents repeated. The succession of disappearances plunged the entire community into tension, and female residents heightened their self-imposed safety measures, such as avoiding going out alone or refraining from night travel. Crime prevention education and awareness programs were established in local communities and schools, and residents built a safety net by communicating with one another. Despite these precautions, Calhoun seemed to evade the dragnet, moving freely within his daily life. By 2024, Calhoun had already been indicted on charges related to 3 murders and the disposal of the bodies. However, evidence related to a 4th murder was not yet fully secured, and he was pleading not guilty to all charges. Police systematically integrated and analyzed digital evidence, witness statements, and clues from the crime scenes, gradually solidifying the probability of his guilt. During this period, investigators began to understand the hidden structure of the crimes, based on the repetitive patterns and inconsistencies found in Calhoun's behavior. Though the crimes were not outwardly visible, there was clear evidence that they were thoroughly planned, and that efforts were made to conceal the connections through rigorous evidence suppression. This analysis provided the foundation for what would later be used as crucial evidence in the subsequent investigation and trial. In the latter half of 2023, the continuous string of disappearances gradually transformed the entire city of Portland into a place of fear. As cases initially dismissed as isolated incidents became linked, citizens slowly realized that their home city was far from safe. The vibrant downtown streets, commuter public transit, quiet residential alleys, and parks all were perceived to be under the shadow of a criminal, and this terror completely shook the public's everyday sense of security. The Portland Police and FBI investigative team recognized the severity of the situation and began a detailed analysis of Calhoun's behavioral patterns and methods. His crimes were secretive and meticulously planned. The crime scenes were left virtually spotless, with evidence thoroughly suppressed. This presented a significant challenge for investigators, demonstrating that simple scene examination wouldn't be enough to clearly understand the case. The investigative team conducted a comprehensive analysis of various data sources, digital footprints such as the victim's last movements, surrounding CCTV footage, communication records, and vehicle GPS data, along with witness statements, were utilized as key evidence. Calhoun, in particular, made every effort to conceal his movements in the time surrounding the incidents, but repetitive patterns and minor inconsistencies drew the investigators' attention. While the crime scenes were somewhat distant from each other, analyzing the temporal and geographical links between the incidents revealed a consistent criminal pattern. The public's fear escalated into collective anxiety. Women avoided going out alone and severely restricted late-night movements. It became the norm to travel with friends or family, and community safety meetings and crime prevention education were actively organized. Residents shared information, establishing a minimal safety net. But despite these efforts, Calhoun continued his crimes, remaining largely unseen. During the investigation, Calhoun's alibis and travel routes were verified multiple times, and each time an inconsistency was found, the investigative net tightened. Police confirmed repetitive patterns in his behavior, and this analysis led to the conclusion that the crimes were deliberate and systematic. The secretive nature of the incidents made it clear they weren't isolated crimes, but a series of calculated, serial offenses. Moreover, the incidents maximized the community's vigilance. The media reported continuously, cautioning citizens, and residents realized the limitations of the social safety net and crime prevention systems. The repetition and secrecy of the crimes provided citizens with ongoing anxiety, and as information related to the case was shared in real time, the entire city felt the impact of the events. This period of the Calhoun case was a critical turning point for the investigative team. As the structure and patterns of the crimes became somewhat clear, the police and FBI were able to adjust their strategies for future evidence collection and crime prevention. Digital evidence, witness statements, and meticulous analysis of the crime scenes played a decisive role in the investigative process, leading the focus of the investigation to zero in on Calhoun. In late 2024 and early 2025, the concentrated investigation by the Portland police and the FBI began to reveal the full scope of the serial disappearances. Though initially classified as fragmented missing persons cases, the recurring patterns and evidence analysis made it clear that the incidents were interconnected. By combining the victims' last known movements, digital footprints near the crime scenes, communication records, and documented contact between Calhoun and the victims, the crimes were confirmed to be not random occurrences, but calculated serial offenses. Investigators meticulously analyzed the crime scenes. CCTV footage, witness statements, smartphone location data, and vehicle travel routes served as vital digital clues. Crucially, despite Calhoun's elaborate attempts to suppress evidence at the crime scenes, the consistency in his repetitive behavioral patterns, timelines, and geographical movements provided investigators with conclusive evidence. This process gradually unveiled the premeditation and organization of the crimes, proving they were systematic serial offenses, not merely isolated murders. The police reconstructed Calhoun's movements and actions by analyzing the temporal and spatial connections between each case. They repeatedly found inconsistencies between Calhoun's alibis and the times and locations where the victims were last seen, as well as discrepancies in their surrounding CCTV and communication records. This allowed the investigative team to identify a consistent criminal pattern and plan, which enabled them to solidify strategies for evidence collection and ultimately, the suspect's apprehension. The impact of the case also spread rapidly across the Portland community. The systematic nature of the serial crimes caused deep anxiety among citizens. The media continuously reported on the investigation's progress, reminding the public to stay vigilant about their safety. It became routine for women to avoid walking alone at night and to be accompanied by friends or family, while local communities heightened awareness by sharing information. These changes demonstrated that the social impact of the case extended beyond simple fear, leading to tangible efforts towards safety reinforcement and prevention. The investigative team also analyzed Calhoun's criminal psychology and behavioral patterns. The perpetrator maintained a seemingly ordinary life, yet meticulously planned his actions before and after the crimes. His methods of evidence suppression and his post-crime conduct analysis became important reference material for future crime prevention and serial crime detection. Digital evidence, witness statements, and physical traces at the crime scenes supported this analysis, playing a decisive role in helping investigators grasp the overall structure of the case. At this stage, the investigative net tightened further around Calhoun. The police and FBI consolidated the secured evidence to clearly define the contours of the crimes and organize the material to be presented at trial. All the data the perpetrators calculated crimes, evidence suppression, and the connections to the victims were systematically compiled, and the full reality of the case became concrete. In August 2025, the Portland serial disappearance case reached a new turning point. Jesse Calhoun was formally indicted on a fourth murder charge, initiating the legal process in earnest. At this stage, Calhoun continued to plead not guilty to all charges, but the massive volume of evidence secured by the police and FBI was steadily clarifying the reality of the crimes. During the preparation for the trial, investigators meticulously questioned victims' families and witnesses, organizing the specific details of each offense. Various materials including the victims' last known movements, traces near the crime scenes, and records of contact between Calhoun and the victims were slated for submission as evidence in court. The police secured comprehensive evidence, such as digital communication data, CCTV footage, and vehicle movement logs, to prove the suspect's elaborate criminal plan and behavior before and after the crimes. These materials played a crucial role in establishing Calhoun's premeditated crimes and his strategy of concealment in court. Portland citizens closely followed the case's conclusion, while also keenly watching the investigative capabilities of the police and FBI and the handling of the case. The fear and anxiety left by the serial disappearances had not been entirely alleviated, but the progression of legal proceedings offered a measure of relief. Citizens had changed their living patterns, intensifying voluntary safety measures such as traveling with company during night movements or choosing safer routes. In the courtroom, victims' families vividly conveyed the severity of the incidents. They candidly expressed the frustration and fear they experienced during the police investigation, and the wounds the crimes had left on their lives. Their testimony in court not only proved the reality and brutality of the crimes, but also emphasized the necessity of public justice. Witness statements, CCTV records, and digital communication data corroborated the investigative process of the police and FBI, proving that Calhoun had carried out the offenses in a planned and meticulous manner. The prosecution systematically presented evidence to the court, including crime scene analysis, the victim links, and the pattern of the offenses. Contact records between Calhoun and each victim, digital traces of the crime, times and locations, and his methods of evidence suppression were used as decisive proof that Calhoun's crimes were not impulsive acts but premeditated and repetitive serial offenses. Even during the trial, Calhoun persistently maintained his innocence, but the prosecution's systematic evidence and investigation data increasingly eroded the credibility of his claims. The materials presented in court clearly demonstrated the entire structure of the crimes and their continuity, highlighting the profound impact the case had on the community and the importance of crime prevention. Ultimately, the court found Calhoun guilty on multiple counts of murder and disposal of human remains, sentencing him to a severe penalty. The verdict offered a measure of restorative justice to the victims' families, and simultaneously delivered important lessons for the citizens of Portland. To learn from the incident, the trial outcome was recorded as an example, affirming the investigative capabilities of the police and FBI and the importance of legal due process, while emphasizing the necessity of strengthening response systems for crimes like serial disappearances. The Jesse Calhoun case did not merely shake the local Portland community. It sent profound social shockwaves across the entire United States. The fact that a seemingly ordinary man systematically committed murder and concealed the bodies of multiple women raised fundamental questions among citizens about safety in everyday life. Crucially, the planned and meticulous nature of the crimes and the thorough suppression of evidence exacerbated the fear and anxiety across the region. The Portland Police and the FBI reaffirmed the vital importance of utilizing digital technology in the process of uncovering the truth. Scientific investigative techniques including CCTV footage analysis, communication record tracing, and verification of vehicle GPS and location data played a core role in solving the crimes. By closely analyzing the suspects' behavioral patterns and the common characteristics of the victims in the early stages, police recognized the need to strengthen early detection and response systems for similar incidents. This process served as a catalyst, highlighting the essential nature of crime prevention and security in modern society. The social response was immediate. Following the incident, female citizens reinforced habits like avoiding solo travel, ensuring they were accompanied during night movements, or choosing safer routes. Crime prevention education programs began operating in community centers and schools, and communication channels between citizens and the police were strengthened. These voluntary efforts to build a community safety net showed that the incident did not end in mere fear, but led to tangible efforts towards safety reinforcement and prevention. The media also actively participated in reporting the case, conveying a sense of urgency to the public. By covering various perspectives, the progression of the serial disappearances and murders, the police investigation, the positions of victims' families, and the community response, they shared the gravity of the incident and its social lessons. Documentary-style content recording the case also played a role in making viewers recognize that the event was not just news but a significant social issue. The Calhoun case is recorded as an example, demonstrating the critical importance of criminal profiling and investigative strategy. The fact that the perpetrator continued his crimes while living an ordinary life emphasized that judging people purely by their appearance is insufficient, and meticulous analysis of behavioral patterns and surrounding circumstances is essential. Investigators recognize the pressing need to further enhance serial crime detection capabilities and evidence analysis techniques following the incident. Furthermore, the case re-examined the importance of law and legal systems, the rigorousness of legal procedures from the investigation and evidence collection to the prosecution and trial proved decisive in protecting victims' rights and realizing social justice. Transparent information disclosure and ensuring public safety during the investigation and trial became essential components in crime response. This case transcends being a mere criminal investigation story. It underscores the necessity of securing social safety and establishing robust crime prevention systems. Portland citizens increased their daily vigilance after the events, and the police and community sought various systems and cooperative measures for crime prevention. The Calhoun case is recorded as a definitive example where the shock and lessons learned were not limited to temporary fear, but led to substantial social change and safety reinforcement. In August 2025, Jesse Calhoun formally faced his fate in court, after being officially indicted on a fourth murder charge. Over the nearly 2 years that followed the first disappearance, the police and FBI had amassed an enormous volume of evidence to prove Calhoun's guilt. The trial transcended a simple criminal case, becoming a major social event that captured the attention of citizens in Portland and across the United States. During the trial preparations, the prosecution submitted diverse materials to the court, including the victim's last known movements, traces near the crime scenes, records of contact between Calhoun and the victims, and digital communication data, crucially, the time and location of each offense, surrounding CCTV footage, and witness statements all supported the fact that Calhoun's crimes were planned and organized. Police investigation reports and digital evidence analysis became decisive. Critical evidence in the courtroom. The testimony of the victims' families was a core part of the trial. They vividly conveyed to the court the frustration and terror they felt while confirming the disappearances and the crimes, as well as the deep scars the events left on their lives. Their testimony went beyond mere factual description, adding emotional weight to the proceedings by emphasizing the psychological and emotional damage caused by the crimes. Although Jesse Calhoun maintained his innocence during the trial, the prosecution systematically proved his guilt using the collected evidence, digital footprints and physical evidence found at each crime scene, records of contact times and locations with the victims, and instances of inconsistent alibis, all rendered Calhoun's claims unconvincing. The trial clearly exposed the meticulousness, premeditation, and repetitive nature of the crimes, which were critical in establishing in court that Calhoun's actions were intentional. The media provided real-time coverage of the trial, reminding citizens of the severity of the case. Portland residents watched the proceedings, still living with anxiety and fear, but simultaneously began to feel a sense of hope for resolution and the realization of justice. As the legal process moved forward, the trial coverage spurred discussion about the case's social impact and public safety issues, reminding the entire community of the importance of crime prevention and legal response. Ultimately, the court found Jesse Calhoun guilty on multiple counts of murder and disposal of human remains, sentencing him to a severe penalty. The verdict offered a sense of restored justice to the victims' families, and clearly delivered the social lessons learned from the case. To the citizens of Portland, the fact that a criminal could live normally while meticulously committing crimes emphasized the need for social vigilance and the reinforcement of crime prevention systems. Following the trial, the Portland Police and FBI closely reviewed their case handling and response strategies to strengthen future serial crime response systems. Investigative techniques including digital evidence analysis, CCTV utilization, securing witness statements, and analyzing crime patterns became more sophisticated, and public safety education and prevention systems were also enhanced. The Jesse Calhoun case is recorded as a prime example that goes beyond a simple criminal case, illustrating the importance of crime prevention, securing social safety, and the realization of legal due process and justice. The case stands as proof of the severe impact crime has on society, leaving a lasting sense of vigilance with both investigative agencies and citizens. Portland continued its multifaceted efforts for crime prevention and safety following the incident, and the Jesse Calhoun case remains a benchmark for serial murder response and social lessons in the United States. And that brings us to the end of the full story of the Jesse Calhoun case. Amidst the horror of these serial disappearances and murders, the police and FBI were ultimately able to uncover the truth through thorough investigation and evidence analysis. This case serves as a powerful reminder to all of us about the importance of everyday safety and social vigilance. If you found this video informative, please hit the subscribe and like buttons, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our future documentary features. Every click makes a huge difference in supporting the production of our videos. Thank you for watching.